So I think your thesis fulfills all requirements of what one should expect of a PhD thesis. Okay, having said this, I would like to ask you two questions, Fernando.
Yes.
First of all, do you think you could include the exchange rate regime or exchange rate policy within your theoretical model? And second, how do you think this variable could be included in your empirical model, and what kind of results would you expect?
Exchange rate regime cannot theoretically be imposed. If the nominal exchange rate is constant, it doesn't matter, because the real economy will adjust always through non-tradable prices, through internal devaluation. If it doesn't happen, then the economy will be in disequilibrium. Somehow the economy has to correct it. And at the end of the day, it was in Argentina in 2001 how it corrected. Empirically, it can be, actually in the model, you have seen that there is a intercept dummy variable. And that's before the crisis in 2001, before the devaluation. There's a dummy variable, and after the devaluation, the dummy considers like the exchange rate regime before the devaluation and after the devaluation. If I set new variables just for the exchange rate regime before the devaluation and after the devaluation, I will be creating collinearity, and I will not be able to estimate the model. Because if you are talking about the determinants of the structural real exchange rate, then we are confusing, because this is just a definition of how the price is defined, the prices, and this is the definition of how the economy works. And then is when you have to distinguish both. But when you see here in the application, you see that when a capital inflow is there, there is an adjustment in the economy there, and then they will change all the variables. And you must know that you have to distinguish between the value, the observed value, and how the economy works. And when you incorporate the capital inflows that Argentina received before the crisis, you will see that the non-tradable prices increased. That's why you see a appreciation of the structural real exchange rate.
In your empirical analysis, you started from 1994 until 2011. Two periods. One is the currency war period, and then there's the second period with after a certain crisis, but then a period of quite high growth. So could you maybe comment on this?
I applied a breakpoint test to check how the variables changed after the crisis and before the crisis. And you have in the appendix all the variables, because this model has 18 variables. And when I did the breakpoints, I almost have double variables. But I anyway estimated them. You will see that these relationships are there. It's just a matter of interpretation, how we will read. If I can start reading all how each variable will affect, it will take many time.
In your future work, I would very much encourage you to introduce money within the model.
Yes, I thank you for reminding me this, because I was thinking, when you incorporate money, you will have an Euler condition which shows how the variation in money must be equal to the variation of inflation. And then you will see that that's why in this graph, when I analyze the current situation of Argentina, I show you that when inflation is higher than the nominal exchange rate, then you will have appreciation. Money is neutral, they won't change the fundamental, but the economy will be in disequilibrium. So the model can be applied. I just thinking in the best way to add money, so I can have an expression like this, in which money is neutral.
Congratulations on the job well done. And you're almost there.
Yeah.
So, having said that, a couple of broad, very general questions.
Okay.
One was going to be about the Dutch disease issue, which keeps coming up, and it's directly relevant to your dissertation, of course. Your analysis is of a snapshot, static nature, right? Whereas when we talk about Dutch disease, what comes to my mind, at least, is that there's something special about the tradable sector, which causes divergence between marginal social costs and marginal social benefits, which means we get a situation with multiple equilibrium. Right? So you have bad equilibrium, you have good equilibrium, and the Dutch disease is the bad equilibrium. So my question would be, how do you, or whether or not, you plan to extend your analysis in the future to include dynamic?
The Dutch disease has like double interpretation, you know, because if the economy is perfect, but capital inflows keep coming, you will see that the tradable sector will disappear, and there will be Dutch disease anyway.
Which
And
might not be a bad thing, right? I mean, the reason it's
not
called a disease is because there must be something special about the tradable sector.
Yeah, it's disease because the day you stop receiving capital inflows, you know that you don't have tradable sector, and then you have to pay it back, and then the tradable sector must go up, and then everybody complains. Now we don't have tradable sector, and that's what's happening. And it happens without imperfections. When you add imperfections, the model can be quite related, but it won't change that much. Yeah, we have to manage. That's why in Norway they manage the capital inflows, because otherwise they will destroy its non-tradable sector. It's
Right, which is the bad
sector,
equilibrium.
which is the bad equilibrium. It's an equilibrium, but it's not very nice.
Yeah. The second question was going to be about the nature of your theoretical and empirical exercise.
Okay.
Is this a long run exercise or a short run exercise? How do you see it?
I think it's a medium term exercise, because Frenkel does a paper in which he evaluates how the structural real exchange rates affects unemployment, and he's based on this idea. We are not in the equilibrium, in the long run equilibrium, but we are in between. But anyway, in between we are still in equilibrium, because we will find our way to the final equilibrium. So
But in his model, is capital fully utilized?
yeah, they use capital.
In the Frankel?
Yeah, I think so. Okay,
So for me, that's a little.
yeah, that's why when you asked me that one, I was thinking how could I reply you with the same model here, but just theoretical. And so I thought maybe we can change the variables. You know, you can say that you now don't have capital, so it's okay. But we can have two factors. You know, a skilled labor and unskilled labor. And in this case, the non-tradable sector is intensive in non-skilled, right? That's okay. Non-tradable sector is intensive in non-skilled, so the tradable sector is intensive in skilled factors. In that case, you will find that these relations hold without capital. And in this case, the model will be perfectly, because there will not be capital inputs. But you will find that those relationships hold, and that the structural real exchange rate is still related to the unemployment rate. Because the empirical work is, you see, it's a long run, because I consider how relative factor prices can change. But because in Argentina I found with the Hausmann test that the unemployment is interdependent to the structural real exchange rate, I thought maybe the relative factor prices are constant. But we can have also this interpretation, and it will change the results.
Right, and that's
that will
the
be
classical development.
Yeah, that will be the straight interpretation,
Right.
without adding capital as explanatory value. And it will also eliminate the fact that the capital is included as indifferences, because we won't need to include capital. And you have the footnote there. You have a footnote in which I added this comment. Because I was thinking also about intertemporal relationships, you know. And this is when you assume a Karl-Douglas intertemporal model, you will have a Euler condition which will have these relationships. And then you will have you will have the same equilibrium here, because this is how the economy works in one period. But then the long run equilibrium will just be aligned. And when capital flows change or the international markets impose you restrictions, you just have to adjust the one period equilibrium to the next period equilibrium when you have to pay. So I was thinking about that. I must develop the idea well, because now I just think I started with the Euler condition, you know. So if I really want to set it in the model, I must think how the relations are, because now I have the idea, I developed this idea, but to set it, I have to see how the literature also does it.
And I thought the final work, particularly the diagrams, are so very impressive.
Okay.
Someone who's barely computer literate, those diagrams are a good work of art, and I much appreciate your attempt to convey those to me, anyway, in that way. Very, very impressive. I have two questions, really, which you will have heard both of these before, so I hope they won't shock you too much.
Okay.
The first one is this, what I always perceive as a bit of a tension in the thesis between the theoretical model and the empirical model. You have a theoretical model which is essentially an equilibrium type model, lots of different sectors all come together to do an equilibrium prices, but of course when you get to the empirical part of the model you have to allow for some sort of dynamics, and I think that's a slight tension, I think, in the thesis.
Yeah, that's what we were discussing with Professor Arslan, making the model intertemporal.
Okay.
And then we will see how the economy adjusts to the new equilibrium. Because now it's in empirical work, I have the error correction model to say how the equilibrium from one point to the other point goes, but there is no empirical, no theoretical relationships about that.
Okay, well, my response is, why is that not in the thesis?
Because at first I was, when I started to make the model, I thought in making the model intertemporal, I'm only considering two sectors, like tradable and non-tradable goods. But then I thought Argentina has a huge primary sector, and the terms of trade are very important in Argentina. So I needed to focus first in that point. That's why I just, because all the complications, I just focus on the static model. But I would have liked to done the other one too.
Okay. My second question is linked to that in a sense, is the question of why choose Argentina? If you wanted to choose a country that was in equilibrium, you wouldn't choose Argentina. A country with a huge disequilibrium over the period which you're estimating. So that are my two questions.
I did the university in Argentina. I was living there, and since I was since 1998.
It's a poor case.
yeah, since 1998, I already have the idea how Argentina was in disequilibrium, how what Argentina needed to improve its situation, because in Argentina between 1998 until now 2001 there was already the economic crisis. Argentina was trying to apply many measures. Politicians were not doing anything, so at the end of the day Argentina had no choice but to devaluate. But because of the history, hyperinflationary history of Argentina, everybody thought we leave the currency board and then we will explode. It didn't happen.
I have only one question, and you will have heard it before, I think. But most of all, you need the law of one price. And for the law of one price to hold, you need perfect competition. How can you defend the choice of Argentina in this context?
There is I mentioned in the introduction why the law of one price can hold. And, I will read here what I wrote for Argentina. I will say, from the Argentinian perspective, Pastore, Carrera, and Ibar Lucia find that the price index of its main exported commodities are driven by international factors such as the USA real exchange rate, the international interest rate, and the global liquidity. So for Argentina, the price of primary goods are all exogenous and the law of one price hold. But for imperfect substitutes like manufacturing, it cannot be that. And here there is one paper which says in the law one price, however, appears to be less problematic in developing countries, in which the tendency is to automatically pass through the effects of exchange rate movements to the domestic prices of tradable goods. And there is an empirical work done by Hinkle and Nessim Gimuya, which showed that you can assume that the law of one price for the manufacturing goods too.
There is a member of the jury, Rodrigo Caputo from Central Bank of Chile, who is absent today, so he apologizes for not being with us. But he commented on the thesis, and he has written an email saying that he has no more questions. for you that he has put many questions before, and he also says that well, he appreciates very much how you have responded to his questions in the final text that you have delivered.
What exactly is the nature of your empirical work
The relationships are empirical. You see the coefficients, show the relationships in Argentina between the unemployment rates and the structural real exchange rates. You can find a statistical significance of 5% that the unemployment rates and the structural real exchange rates are negatively related. And it's just what the theory in this case predicts, but this graph reflects the empirical results. The empirical model is an application of what some theoretical models have applied to Argentina have found. Some papers have found how the structural real exchange rate affects unemployment. The other ones have suggested no, unemployment is the explanatory variable of the structural real exchange rate. And they do separately. And are they interrelated? Because if they are interrelated, what you are suggesting is not correct. And that's why this is just not a test of the theoretical model, but this is also empirical work in line with the other works in the literature.
Yes, I'm, as you heard, his promoter, and so I have still a task to do at the end of the ceremony. But I'm hesitating because I know you already for a very long time, Fernando, you know it.
Yes.
And I will give my witness about that within some moments. But also, I had the occasion to put you very many questions before the pre-defense, but also after the pre-defense, already some 9 months ago.
Yes.
During the last 9 months. So I would like to, if you don't have a problem, Mr. Chairman, to pass my tour and to take the next opportunity to.
And the promovendus has no problems either with this?
No, I don't think so.
Well, then I would like to take the advantage to ask you something about the experience in Argentina. Are there any lessons, a little bit broader, but you can of course use the insights from your research?
Because Argentina has a primary sector which generates capital income. So you see that the terms of trade have helped the economic process in Argentina. And when you talk about the terms of trade, you will see that Argentina have a cycle. When the terms of trade go up, everything is good. And when they go down, then Argentina have to adjust because they never save the money. And in this case, for the Greek case, what they should do, they have to appreciate, they have to diminish the tradable prices by 20 or 30%, but it generates recession. And the model shows that. What can the European Union do to make it less painful? Productivity improvements in the tradable sector, but not just by giving money, because if the government receives money and they address it to demand, then it won't change. Europe has to say we give this money, and this money must be addressed specifically to productivity, because otherwise 20 or 30% of the adjustment of the non-tradable sector won't happen, and Greece will fall in default. So now I'll suggest complementary policies to the European Union to make the adjustment easy for Greece.
Okay, thank you.
He's done a very good job. I think the end of the thesis, particularly the empirical section of Argentina, although it's, I think it's very good. It's easy to be critical in its relation to the theoretical model. It's one of the first attempts to really get to grips with estimating structural exchange rates for a very difficult country with lots of very difficult observations and structural breaks in data. So he's done a very good job. I wish him all the very best in his future career. Well done, Fernando.